So this story time is definitely a change in comparison to some of the other ones I've told on this channel. I feel like every single story I tell on this channel, it's always me getting caught or doing something that, gets me in trouble with my parents. And I'm always talking about, my mistakes as like a teenager and shit like that. But this story time is kind of a nice change in pace and kind of a funny one for many reasons. But the main reason being I caught my mom doing something for once instead of her catching me, you know what I mean? So I hope you guys enjoy the story time. If you do, leave a like on the video and let's jump into it. So today's story time takes place 2 years ago. I had just gotten back from the grocery store. I bought some stuff for my house and I was unpacking it, putting everything in the fridge that needed to go in the fridge, just being an adult, you know what I mean? And I got a text message from my mom and she goes, "Hey, I need a favor from you." Now, that was odd to me. My mom usually doesn't ask me for favors, so immediately I called her, and she answers, and I was like, "Hey, Mom, what do you need?" She goes, "I'm going to a concert tonight. Can you come over and watch the Dogs?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course. What concert you're going to?" And she's like, "Oh, it's this cover band. They're a local band. Like, it's nothing crazy, no big concert or anything, just a local thing, but I'm going to be out late, and I want someone to feed the dogs and let them out, so you don't have to stay at the house, but at least stop by for an hour." I was like, "Yeah, of course." So later that night, my mom texted me when she was leaving, and about an hour after that, I went over to my mom's house. I let the dogs out, I fed them, and I'm just kind of sitting there on her couch watching some TV, and I'm bored, right? And I'm going to be there for a little bit longer, so I hit up one of my friends. We'll just call his friend Vinny. I hit up my friend Vinny, and I was like, "Yo, man, I'm at my mom's house. I know you live nearby. Want to come hang out for a bit?" He's like, "Yeah, man, of course." So Vinny comes over with another friend of ours. We'll call that friend Anthony. So Vinny and Anthony are both at the house at my mom's with me hanging out. Now, there was nothing really out of the ordinary there. Just some friends hanging out, watching my mom's dogs. But it was later at night when this story time really gets good, when my mom gets home. So my mom ends up getting home at like midnight. I ended up spending like 3 or 4 hours at her house. She was gone for quite a while. And when she gets home, something seems off with her. She walks in the front door, and she is just hysterically laughing at something. I have no idea what. I still don't know to this day. And I walked up to her, and I was like, "Hey, what are you laughing at?" She's like, "Oh, my friend, the one that drove me home, she told me the funniest joke." I was like, "Oh, which friend?" And she's like, "Oh, it was Cassandra." I'm like, "Oh, yeah? What'd she say?" And she goes, "I can't even remember. It was just hilarious." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. How was the concert?" She's like, "Oh, let me tell you, it was amazing. The visuals, the lights, like, it was crazy." And the way she's talking, it just seems odd. Like, I don't know, something about it. She was so enthusiastic, like way more than usual. But, I didn't look too into it. I figured she just had a few drinks at the concert. Like, she didn't drive herself home. Her friend drove her car. So I assumed she was just drinking. And maybe that's why she was a little bit, like kind of laughing a lot and stuff. So that's what I thought, right? But then, after about 2 minutes of her being back, and I'm talking to her about the concert, she goes from like laughing and being, super upbeat to just being dead silent. Like, she completely goes silent and her face completely changes. She looks almost scared. And I was like, "Mom, are you okay?" And she goes, yeah, I'm fine." And she does not break eye contact with the floor. She just would not look up at me. And I was like, "Do you need to sit down?" She goes, "Yeah, I think I do." So I walk her over to the couch. We sit down. We're with my friends at this point, and they're also asking her questions about how the night was, and she's not answering them. She's just staying silent, looking down at the ground, looking scared. So I chime in. I'm like, "Mom, are you okay? Like, did you drink a little too much?" And she goes, "No, I only had one drink." And I was like, "Anything else you do over there? You smoke a little weed or something?" Because, she's done that in the past. And she's like, No, weed." And I was like, "Anything else?" And she hesitates. And she goes, "Nope, nothing else." And I was like, "Are you sure?" And she hesitates again. And she goes, "Nope, nothing else." And I was like, "All right, well, if you think of anything, let me know." And like 20 minutes later, after just sitting there silently watching TV with my friends and her, she starts having a panic attack. And I have to bring her to her room, sit her down, get her some water, and it's kind of like talk her down from this panic attack. And I did not know what was wrong with her. Like, it felt so weird. I had no clue what could be causing this. Now, luckily, I ended up talking her down from this panic attack. After like 30 or 40 minutes, she was completely fine. But then something even weirder happened. As she's laying down in bed and she calms down from her panic attack, she points to a picture on the wall, and it's a picture of me and her and my brother, and she goes, "Did that photo always move like that?" And I'm like, "What?" And I look over to my left and I look at it, and it's just a still picture. And I was like, "What do you mean, did it always move like that?" She goes, "Yeah, it's like one of those moving frames, right? Like, it's like a video in the picture frame." I was like, Mom, what are you talking about? That is a still photo that's been there for 10 years. And then she starts freaking out again because the photo wasn't moving, and in her mind it was. And that's when I realized, I'm like, okay, she definitely must have taken something either by accident or on purpose, and it's making her see things. So I asked her one time real nicely, I'm like, Mom, tell the truth. Did you take anything tonight that can make you, a little bit over the edge, maybe see some things? Maybe some mushrooms, maybe something else. She goes, no. And I was like, okay. So the rest of that night was pretty normal. My friends went home shortly after. She went in her room. I said goodbye to them. And then I kind of spent most of the night just sitting there watching TV with her and, making sure she didn't freak out. And as the hours went by, she got better and better. And eventually she fell asleep and there was nothing, really out of the ordinary there. And the next morning is really where it gets even more interesting. So I ended up spending the night at her house because I didn't want to leave her alone. I felt bad for her. Something was wrong. And the next morning I wake up and I walk out in the kitchen and she's making coffee. And she goes, hey, did you sleep here? I was like, yeah, I did. She goes, oh, you didn't have to do that. Like, you could have went home. I was like, no, I didn't want to. You seemed like upset about something or anxious and I didn't want to, leave you alone. She's like, oh, I appreciate that. And I was like, so what was up with last night? Like, you were really acting weird. And she goes, yeah, I took something. And I was like, oh, so the truth comes out. What was it? Tell me, please. And she goes, I took a tab of acid. And I did not expect to hear that. Like, it blew my mind. My mom's the kind of person that has like maybe one drink a year, maybe two. She'll sometimes smoke a joint every like maybe 6 months, maybe once a year. She does not do anything very consistently. So to jump to acid is crazy to me. So I was like, nah, you're kidding. She goes, nope. I don't know why. I just didn't want to tell you last night. I was anxious about it. Didn't want to admit it. And I was like, hey, it's fine. At least you're telling me now. She's like, yeah, but it did not affect me well. I had kind of a bad trip. I was like, yeah, it sure seemed that way. Like, you literally thought a photo of us on the wall was moving. And she goes, yeah, it was. It was so freaky. Like, in the photo, everyone was smiling back at me. It was so crazy looking. I was like, yeah, it definitely sounds like you were having a bad trip. And she goes, oh, yeah, most definitely. But thank you for staying here with me and, watching me. I was like, yeah, of course. And I'm like, it's really funny, Mom. All these years, you caught me doing stuff and getting me in trouble, and the tables have finally turned. She goes, I know, right? Don't tell anybody about this. I was like, don't worry. Secret's safe with me. But I might have to tell a story time about this eventually. And she said, go for it. So yeah, I got my mom's permission to make this video. But yeah, after this, my mom hasn't touched acid since, rightfully so. And yeah, that's pretty much that. Moral of the story is, I don't know, maybe don't do what my mom did in this story time, because she had a pretty bad trip. But yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed this story time. I thought it was a crazy one. If you did, please leave a like on the video. I'd really appreciate it. Feel free to leave your story times in the comments down below. And subscribe if you're new. I'll see you guys later. Peace.
Baby, I'm damaged. I cannot plan this. Won't you be mine? And